The Fiedler's Contingency model was created in the mid-1960s by Fred Fiedler, a scientist. The relationship-oriented leaders usually view their LPCs more positively. Fiedler contingency model, which is very, very important, it will help you to identify your leadership style. It will help you to identify the situation in which you are working. It will also determine the most effective leadership style. Good morning and welcome to session 4 in unit 4, organization behavior, where we are going to talk about the Fiedler's contingency model. Now, this is a very, very important model when it comes to leadership, where we are talking about how this model can change the dynamics at the workplace. The Fiedler's contingency model was created in the mid-1960s by Fred Fiedler, a scientist who actually studied about the personality and characteristics of leader. Now, what is more important in this world than leadership? Why? Because it is the leader who drives the organization to the next level as far as possible. So there has been several studies about leadership, about their eminence, their presence of guiding the organization to the next level. So when we look into the Fiedler contingency model, it states that there is no best style of leadership. Instead, a leader's effectiveness is based on the situation. This is the result of the two factors, leadership style and situational favorableness. So what Fiedler actually tries to say that there is no one way of leadership. There is no predetermined definition of leadership. There is no one way of saying that he is the only leader and we need to have the same kind of personality or characteristics. The only thing that we always talk about is the effectiveness, which means leadership is situational based. Leadership is something which has got the effect of taking things forward, and it is actually a kind of a factor where we are trying to talk about taking over the situation altogether. Now, the Fiedler's contingency model, where we are going to talk about identifying the leadership style, is the first step in the model. Fiedler believed that leadership style is fixed and it can be just measured using a scale, what he developed called as the least preferred co-worker scale. So predominantly what happens in leadership is that the style of operating is pretty much fixed. You cannot suddenly change the dynamics, the behavior, the groupism, the model and factors of a leader. They are just there. They are just available in terms of leadership. What is actually changing is the situation. What will actually change are the number of employees, the division, the caliber, the factors altogether. So based on that, we would try to understand the leadership model. So what did Fiedler do is that he started creating a model which is also called as the least preferred co-worker scale model altogether. Now in this model, the scale asks you to think about the person whom you have least enjoyed working with. So underline that word, least enjoyed working with. This can be the person whom you have worked with in your job, in your education, or in your training. So what we want to understand is that from a person, what is that you have tried to go ahead or experience with the person in the least manner? That means the person whom you were not interested at all to work, the person whom you felt is probably the most difficult person to join hands and work with. So that's where exactly Fiedler actually started bringing in this model called as the least person co-work together. Then you start rating how to feel about this person for each of the factor. Add up your scores. If your total score is high, you are likely to have a relationship-oriented leader. If your total score is low, you are more likely to be a task-oriented leader. Now, what happens here is that what you will be asked to do is book on the various parameters that would be given. Now, you will keep on scoring against that person on basis of various factors of interaction. Now, if we see that the total score is high, you are likely to be in a relationship-oriented leader. That means to say that yes, there is going to be a factor of growth there. If your total score is low, that means you are just a task-oriented leader. You just want the work to happen. You just want the personality to be more on the rigid side altogether. Now, the model says that task-oriented leaders usually view their LPCs more negatively, resulting in a lower score. These are people who are not worried about the relationship with the employees. Why? Because for a task-oriented leader, the most important thing that he would be thinking about, that he would be deciding about, is only on the factors of the matter, that he is only interested to work about that particular object, about that particular project, about that particular task. The event has to just get over. He is not worried about the relationship with his employees. He is not worried about the emotions. He is not worried about the family work-life balance and the other factors. What he is worried about is that today's task has to get completed. Is the task completed? Is the work completed? Has the targets been achieved altogether? If the answer is yes to all those factors, then it is done. That is what we are looking in terms of the task orientationship altogether. Now, the Fiedler calls these low LPC leaders, he says that the low provision are very effective at completing tasks. Now, this is where you will see that when you score that low, when you don't have that relationship, when you don't have that emotional bonding, you are not really bothered about the organization in terms of relationship. You are not worried about whether the employee is in a good mood, whether he is capable, not capable, what has happened in his life. No, I don't want to know the day-to-day affairs. I am only bothered about the factor that whether the employee is able to complete the task that is given. So as a leader, I am pretty much confirmed and pretty much confining myself to the fact that whether the work is completed. So these are people who are very, very effective in completing the task rather than scoring up to the scales. Followed by, they are quick to organize a group to get a task or a work done. Relationship building is a low priority. So imagine an organization for a while where you have managers who believe that a work has to be done, a work has to be completed. I am not bothered about the factor, I'm not worried about the factor that this person is there. I need to look into him. Is he good? Is he bad? Capable? Non-capable? What is his background? What is his qualification? Can we need to build a social rapport with him? I don't worry about it at all. What am I seriously worried? What am I seriously looking into is that I am just looking into the factor that this person, will he be able to complete the task or not? I have a task in hand and it needs to be completed in the next 24 hours. So I will be looking in for people who can jump into the task, finish it, complete it, and let's start moving further. I am not going to worry more about the relationship at any point of time. So for me, relationship building inside an organization is absolutely a low priority. I'm not going to think about it. I'm not going to worry about the employees at all. Finally, the relationship-oriented leaders usually view their LPCs more positively. Why do they look into their LPC more positively? Why? Because they think that an employee has to be first understood. Now, let us just shift the track for a moment. If I'm a kind of person who believes that building relationship with employee is more, because employees are the asset of the organization. If I'm a personality like Ratan Tata, if I'm a personality like Narayan Murthy, I would have always believed that employees are the biggest asset of the organization. You cannot build an organization without people, because without people, there is no organization, there is no process, there is no development at all. So priority is people. Build a relationship with people, and people will build your organization. That's exactly where we are talking about a relationship-oriented leader. So when we are going into those factors, we call them as the high LPC leaders. They focus more on the personal connection. They are good in avoiding and managing conflict. As result-oriented, as a relationship-oriented leader altogether, I believe in one factor clearly. I do not want that conflict scenario. I want to maintain good relationship with each and everyone in the organization. I want to build a system where people are recognized, where people are understood, where people have been given the chance to motivate, and people have been given the chance to communicate their ideas all together. I don't want to be in a structure, I don't want to be in a place where people are demotivated, where people are just thrown back. I want to be a part of a system where I understand people. I allow them to speak. I allow them to come forward, explain their thoughts. Let me dwell with them. Let me understand the need for this particular leadership. So that's exactly where I'm talking about a relationship-oriented leader. And that's why they will be better in terms of making up a complex decision. Now, it's very easy to quantify things by numbers and say that, yes, I have achieved. But it is extremely difficult to quantify the emotion factor. It is extremely difficult to handle situations where you have intellectuals to handle their complex emotions. So that's where a relationship-oriented leader will first come forward and be able to handle those complex scenarios better, because he understands the people. He knows these are the challenges that we are seeing in the day-to-day walk of life. Let us take this as an opportunity and build the organization at any given point of time. So that's where I would say that complex decisions can be done in a better manner. Now, moving forward, applying the Fiedler's contingency model, which is very, very important, it will help you to identify your leadership style. It will help you to identify the situation in which you are working. It will also determine the most effective leadership style. So definitely, as a Fiedler model that we are talking about, it will help you to identify the factors. It will help you to identify the situation even more better. It will tell you what exactly is needed at that point, at that juncture altogether, so that you will be able to handle people better at any given point of time. So that's why Fiedler's contingency model really matters a lot, and you will be able to make an effective decision given the opportunity. With that, the criticisms also start coming on the Fiedler model. They say that in the Fiedler model, because our natural leadership is fixed, the most effective way to handle situation is to change the leader. He did not allow flexibility for leaders. So one among the criticisms that has been always spoken about in Fiedler's contingency model, or in that case, is that people feel that since the nature of leadership is fixed, you cannot change people pretty much. You cannot change your leadership style. You cannot make people believe that whatever you have done is right or wrong every time. So what happens here is that the concept of flexibility will definitely get beaten down. So that is one factor which has always been spoken as a criticism there. Why? Because since the nature of human being, the behavior is rather rigid, bringing the other factors inside will never be counted. So the flexibility of leadership is definitely absent when you start talking about the Fiedler model. Followed by, for instance, if a low LPC leader is in charge of a group with a good relation and doing unstructured tasks, and she has a weak position, that is a fourth situation, then according to the model, the best solution is to replace her with a high LPC leader instead of asking her to take a new leadership style, which means to say that though she might be task oriented, but if she has a relationship quotient working on, there is no point in terms of asking her to change her style. Rather, let's replace the leader itself. So every time asking some person to change your behavior according to the situation, rather we can bring in a person who's more accommodated for that situation. So every time we cannot ask people to change their mannerisms and behavior as you want or as the company wants. Rather, we could probably change the leader, which could be even more better. Now, there is also an issue with the least preferred co-worker scale, because if you fall near the middle score ranging, then it will be unclear which leader you are. So whenever you fall in the mid-range, if you're not neither on the high range or at the lower range, and if you're falling somewhere in the middle factor altogether, it will become even more complicated for us to understand whether what kind of leader are you. Are you one-sided to a LPC on a higher scale or on a lower scale, because it becomes an average. So using all these conclusions, we have to understand that Fiedler's model cannot be accepted as a complete leadership model. There are drawbacks, there are criticisms. So somewhere you need to draw a line and understand leadership more in a practical manner. Now, it is also perfectly possible that your least co-worker is genuinely confused, unpleasant, or an evil person, and if you are unfortunate enough, you might have encountered such a person just once in a career, but you might always categorize to be a low LPC leader, however people-oriented you are. So what happens here is that there are many unfortunate situations where the ratings might go against you, where the ratings might not be even in favoritism of you. At that time, what to do? At that time, what to be taken into account? We do not know. Why? Because categorically speaking, this might not be the correct one. You might have encountered into a lot of problems, lot of situations altogether. With all that in mind, with all those factors in mind, I would definitely say that the Fiedler's model will not be considered to be a final leadership model, an apex in benchmarking the qualities of a leadership. We need to understand leadership from a practical stand, from that point of view, how people accept him and how he is able to solve the problems given a particular situation. With this, I come to the end of this particular session. I hope and believe that all the information shared through this particular session will be of a great help and resource to you. In the upcoming session, we shall be talking more about the different styles of leadership and the functionalities. But until then, stay tuned, stay blessed, and stay enlightened forever. Thank you once again for joining me today on this wonderful presentation. Thank you.